Remember, in fact, can we play it again? Welcome, boys and girls, to a new edition of Revista De La Liga. Actually, no, it's Revista De La Liga, the reunion. This is going to be 2 hours in which the men and women that shape the Revista De La Liga will be with us, and that means producers, presenters, special guests as well. And we're going to look back to what it was, a show that produced for us anyway, a lot of fun, a lot of anecdotes, a lot of stories that we'll try to bring you here. We'll show you the behind the scenes, but we'd like you to take part on this too. So if you've got memories of Revista de la Liga and you want to share them with us, just send them over and we'll read as many as we can. So without further ado, let me just tell you a little bit of the story of how it all got together. Remember that Spanish football you could watch from 1996, and that first year there was already a Spanish football show produced in Granada by and presented by Jerry Armstrong and Rob Palmer, who will be here with us today. I joined in 1997. It used to be called Spanish Football, presented by David Bobbin. Eventually, it became Revista de la Liga, and a lot of people were part of what we did. As you'll hear from presenters, from producers, from guests, there was a lot of work put behind the scenes, but there was a lot of fun as well. So, if you, as I say, if you got some of the stories, come and share us. But I think we should come and introduce our first guest, Scott Minto, because, by the way, I don't know who's coming on. I recognize when I see the face. I recognize that face. Well, you're looking good, Scott. How are you?
Thank you very much, Guillem. I have to say, first thing, when I heard that Revista tune as well, I was like, oh my gosh, how many memories does that bring? And I'm really glad you said, can we play that again, please? And just have a second think up. So it was brilliant. But no, I'm really good, mate. Apologies. I'm actually in my mum's house at the moment. I've just taken her out for a bit of brunch, realised the time, had to get back. So I'm here at the moment, not exactly dressed up in the way that you are, but where are you at the moment?
In Palamos, can I show you?
Oh,
there.
Wow.
Those are the views that
I used to like
enjoy
it,
one day
not
when
anymore.
you come over.
Absolutely. You keep on throwing out the invitations. And let me just say to everybody out there who's listening already, I kind of created a Revista WhatsApp group just a couple of weeks ago, didn't I? Funnily enough, before this all came about. And I thought, do you know what? Wouldn't it be great to see the boys? Because it was 4 years of my life that was just crazy, as you know, not just professionally, but personally as well. And they were 4 very, very, very special years. So I just thought, you know what? I honestly thought this, Guillem. I know what Guillem's like. He's going to be booked up till 2024. So let's just get in there and throw in, look, maybe in March, but maybe sometime in the summer we can meet up. So to be fair to you did come up with a couple of dates. They were mid-June. I'm surprised. I'm surprised.
So yeah, in mid-June. Yeah. We'll meet in mid-June. But let's go back a little bit to the period where you joined us, because you kept very quiet in the first few months when you were with us. How hard it was for you, for many reasons, to present the show. So tell us, why was it so difficult?
Yeah, I mean, look, from a professional point of view, I'd never presented live football before. Not on a regular basis, and not on a league that I didn't really know too much about, and therefore had no history in terms of, well, last season this happened, and what about this? And you know what it's like as well, because you've done it all. You've presented as well as been the guest and the face of Spanish football. When you have that earpiece in your ear and you've got the producer, the director, the PA counting down, and you're hearing different voices at different times, and then I'm having that conversation with you or any other guest. And to be fair to the guests, when you think about they went on live TV in their second language, most of them. They must have been really nervous as well. So I was nervous about doing a show that I'd never done before, that I knew was very iconic, that had the best club teams in the world at that particular time. that I hadn't, ever really experienced at a time from a personal level as well, where, as you know, my wife had just had twins. So we had 3 kids in 16 months. So what used to happen was, and I've got a lot for you to thank you on air and Stevie Rowe off air for basically looking after me in those first, I'd say 6 months at least, and maybe even that first season. Because I used to, back then, Sky would actually give you a chauffeur-driven car to take, pick you up and drop you off home. I'm not joking, Guillem. 100 times out of 100, by the time we went round the M25 and he tapped me on the shoulder, the driver, I'd be asleep. He'd wake me up and I'd be thinking, can't we go around the M25 one more time? Because I just had 4 hours sleep changing nappies with newborn twins. So Stevie Rowe had a double espresso waiting for me all the time. That was my first drink. And it was literally, give yourself a slap, you're about to go on air in a couple of hours.
By the way,
it wasn't easy, I'll be honest.
We contact Stevie Rowe, and for whatever reason he hasn't answered. This has been done in the last 2-3 days only. So Stevie is, of course, a essential part of what happened. The transition from, say, what we used to be called Spanish football, first with Devin Bowen and Rob Wotton. Rob is going to join us at some point as well. And with Stevie, we created this thing that was a little bit different to what was out there. It wasn't just 2 hours highlights and some stories. Actually, what I aimed with it was to translate into television the midnight radio shows in Spain, in which people not only tell you stories and break news, and we broke a lot of news. I'm sure the stories will come out in the next couple of hours, but to discuss football in an adult way, and in a way that I don't think it was seen on television at the time, because it was journalists mixed with professionals, and yourself, of course, who you weren't just a presenter. You actually you managed the conversation be fluid, but also added to it, and that was the magic of the mixture that we had in place. Is that how you remember it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I feel almost I didn't add to it, and if we did it again now, I would be adding a lot more to it. But I'm also very aware, and that was because I was still learning the ropes and the mechanics of being a presenter, and just trying to get that right, and trying to, when you get counted to a break and, off air especially, and look, the VT's not working, keep talking, and just trying to get all that. I mean, presenters are the sort of top half of that swan. They're meant to be looking all serene and in control, when really you're listening what's going on. And Spanish football especially, the live games with the loss of feeds and even things that, autocue maybe not working, which is why in the end I tried to wean myself off autocue and not rely on machines, because they would go wrong. I felt that Revista was really enjoyable. It was something which I felt, and I know you commented on at the time, that I did a lot of prep for, and used 30%, but I was quite happy to do that, because that prep, I'm a great believer in fail to prepare to fail. And if you don't use stuff, well, the viewers will never know you didn't use that stuff. But if it's there and you need it because something's gone wrong, it was worth it in the end. But in the end, it was like, hello, welcome to Revista De La Liga. Guillem, chaps, just talk, and it was one of those, right? End of the show now, the hour just flew by. It really did.
Scott, look who's joined us. Rob Watson, how are you, Rob?
Roberto.
Oh, Guillem Antonio Ramon Balague Garcia.
I forgot about that. So I was never introduced, Scott, by Rob as Guillem Balague, which Rob must be the first person in the UK that said the name properly. I had difficulties to get people to say my name properly. But Rob added to it. Rob
Yes.
made my name very, very long. Please explain.
Yes, well, we had to get your full title in, and your mum was always delighted when I gave you your full moniker of Guillem Antonio Ramon Balague Garcia. So I always felt it was only right and appropriate to give you your full title. But look where I am, Guillem. I've just come off air, and I'm in there. You will know this room very well. And if I come down here, there we go.
Oh my God!
Guillem Balague, it's still there.
I haven't been there for 5 years, so my clothes are there. Open it. See what we get in there.
Well,
What's there?
I think I rifled all your suits out of it at some stage because I wanted to match your sartorial elegance, which of course I never did. But there you go.
My clothes. Oh my God, that's unbelievable.
There we go.
You can give them away.
Guillem, you're so
Solomon.
iconic there that you're like the sort of the number 10 Lionel Messi shirt that must never be worn again. You know, we hang it up, but we just leave it there.
Can't use
Don't
that
touch
wardrobe
it.
for anything else. But I've got to pick Scott up because I never got a chauffeur-driven car. I just wondered what on earth was going on when I was listening to that.
That was changed, mate. A few years later, they changed it. A few years later.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember. I always tried to wear different clothes, and at that point, as you could see there, they had given me clothes that I had to wear. I wasn't particularly happy with it, but you know, it was grey, blue, white. That was basically it. But before those clothes, and especially in the last years when I started wearing my shirts, at the beginning I used to wear leather jackets and things with hoodies. And I remember Nigel Dean, who we're going to have on later, the producer, saying, the hoodie, can I see from the back? Can I just cut it? I've got some scissors here. No, you cannot cut a hoodie. But he couldn't stand a hoodie on television.
I can't imagine
Anyway,
Nigel
Rob,
ever wearing one, mate. I have to be honest.
No.
telling you. So, Rob, tell us, what memories does Revista La Liga bring to you?
Well, I think I'm right in saying, Guillem, I'm not sure, but the name of Revista De La Liga was when we first got together, which was after I took over from David Bobin, who sadly is no longer with us, David. And we came up, well, you came up with the idea of a sort of more magazine show. We had Gary Cottrell go out and do those pieces, which were just amazing. He did one on every club, and they were about sort of 10 minutes long, which are fantastic. But, you know, I was very lucky and very blessed the time that I did Spanish football, that, you know, it was the days of sort of Beckham, Raúl, you know, Zidane in that wonderful Real Madrid team. You know, someone called Rafa Benitez, I don't think he'd ever catch on. He was taking Valencia to the title. And Barcelona, you know, the magic of Ronaldinho and others. It was just such I just loved every second of it. And your company, and we used to have Roberto Martinez, and he used to come and sit on the sofa with us on a Sunday evening. We'd eat sandwiches. And he'd analyse the games when we were watching. And I'd say, Roberto, what do you want to do when you give up playing football? And he said, I want to be a manager. And I used to think, bless him, he's far too nice to be a manager. He'll never succeed. Shows how much I know about football, doesn't it? But they were just wonderful, wonderful days, really.
You two of the presenters that lasted the longest. You already mentioned David Bobin, who. Bless him, when we first started doing Spanish football, and we told his story with him many times. Rest in peace, by the way. Yes, as you say, he's not with us anymore. But when the show came to him first, or when they asked him to do the show first, he said, "Do not expect me to learn anything about Spanish football. I will just read my lines, and that's it." He thought it was not a step up, if you like. Spanish football. Nobody really cared at that time. I'm talking 97. This was the year after Rob and Jerry had done it. It took him, my job was to actually bring Spanish football to him. And I will tell him a story. So I dedicated the half an hour before the show to tell stories to David, so he got engaged. And again, at the end, he loved it. At the end, he was just couldn't have enough of it. He loved Spanish football. He loved everything to do with the Spanish football. And with his deep voice, he represented Spanish football very well. You two were, as I said, the longest. We had Kate Abdo. We had Mar Bolton as well. But Scott, from your time, and by the way, let me know if my sound is okay, because it feels like it's breaking down a little bit. But
no, you're good, mate.
Yeah, good. Just let me know an anecdote, a moment that for you was important, one perhaps in which you showed your ability as a presenter when you were starting.
Cool. Now you're testing me. Show my ability as a presenter. In the 4 years. No, I tell you what. There was a big moment during that first year where I was kind of thinking, I don't know if it's going to happen for me. I don't know if it's right. Presenting's just too way out there. I was a natural pundit. I wasn't a natural presenter. And, obviously we get the feeds coming in from Spain. And I think it was Malaga. I can't even remember who the opposition were. And we had Jerry and Ozzy, legend that is Ozzy. I'll come on to him in just a second as well on something else. And we lost the feed, or was it we lose the feed, or something was thrown at the linesman and he had blood. So there was literally, right, we're going to come back. And it went on for so long that we weren't quite sure what was going to happen. You can hear Stevie Rowe in the background, right, I'm going to go off. I'm going to try and find out what's happening. You just keep the chat going. And it was a chat it's one thing to say, it was a 20-minute chat. If you've got a 20-minute chat, you can plan for that. It's another thing to suddenly be sprung on it. It's 20 minutes chat, start now. It's another thing to end up having a 20-minute chat, but actually you don't know, this could be 2 minutes or this could be an hour. And Jerry understood it. Ozzy understood it. And I don't know what happened to the linesman, bless him. I think his head's okay now. But from that moment, after what happened there, I thought, yes, I can do this. And Guillem, there were so many times during the live matches where there was a loss of feed, and we're all sitting there with our feet up, eating the crisps, and suddenly it's like, wait, get the crisps away. You're going to come on. You got 10. Right, give me 1 second. I'm not ready yet. And the guest is in the toilet, wait for him to come back. And so it was,
how television has changed.
Moments.
How television has changed, Scott, that I feel that if that happened now, they'll go straight away into the studio and we'll just show what we're eating. And there will be a different kind of a roughness to it, I think, that will be good television. In there, I think Sky helped us put the standards so high in everything we did. And it's important that we have a producer with us, Nigel Dean. Hello, Nigel, to tell us about those
afternoon, everyone.
Those standards.
Hi, Nigel.
But Nigel,
how you
before
doing,
I,
Scott,
before I ask
Rob?
you, Rob, tell us from your time as a presenter what memory of it or a moment that'll stick with you forever.
Well, obviously having Nigel in my ear every Sunday and Saturday, and for the Revista programs, I think the wonderful guests. I mean, we mentioned Roberto Martinez. And the wonderful guest, Guillem, that you managed to get, everyone seemed to want to come on to Spanish football, didn't they? And I can remember one time you got Joe Cole, and he just scored. He was playing for Chelsea at the time, and he just scored, I think, the winner against Manchester United. Not that end of season goal that he scored, but he scored a goal, and he came straight from the game. And I'd never met Joe before. And he arrived at the studio. You can remember they've all been redone now, and it's much more sort of genteel and civilized here now. But in those days, it was a little rough and ready, wasn't it? Our office upstairs there. And he arrived, and I'm thinking, oh, goodness, he's not going to be happy with his surroundings. This is a Premier League player here, one of the greats. And he arrived in his tracksuit and he said, is there anywhere I could get changed? Now, if you'd seen our changing rooms, they were, fleas wouldn't even get changed in there. And so he said, I could just get changed in the corner. So he got out of his tracksuit, put his clothes on, and he said, I'm really sorry, is there any chance of any food? Because I'm a bit hungry. Come straight from Stamford Bridge. And I was thinking, oh no, he's going to want sun-dried tomatoes on ciabatta bread or something really healthy, isn't he? This is going to be a disaster. And he said, well, if you just got an egg sandwich or anything, that'd be great. So we gave him this egg sandwich, and he was there for the Madrid derby. And I thought, I better run through sort of some of the stories around. He knew every player. He not only knew every player, he knew their height, he knew their shoe size, he knew everything, did Joe. Anyway, so we get into the game. We had a half-hour build-up, and we get into the game, and the match is going in. He said, is it all right to use my telephone for a moment? And I was thinking, oh no, here we go. He's going to phone his agent, and he's going to say there's nowhere for me to get changed. I'll have an egg sandwich. And I'm sat next to this buffoon. What on earth is going on? I said, yeah, Joe, of course. You know, thinking, oh, here we go. He gets on the phone and he said, the first thing I hear him say is, Mum, how did I get on? Did I do all right? And then he said, oh, you don't like my shirt? Okay, put me on to Dad. Dad, did I do all right? Did I say the right thing? And I just thought, how amazing. That is just brilliant. And it was, you know, those guests we had in were just so wonderful. And everyone seemed to want to get onto the Spanish football. They just loved it, didn't they? And a lot of that, Guillem, down to you and Nigel and everyone who produced such wonderful stuff.
I remember producing a Saturday night show, and I can't remember the teams now, but we later found out that not only did people want to come on, but lots of football luminaries actually watched it, even after maybe a tense Saturday with their team in their game. Because we later found out after that Saturday night that Arsenal had a match that afternoon, and it was Arsene Wenger's coach at the time, his amazing coach, his birthday. And he spent his birthday evening that Saturday night, not in some lovely restaurant eating a meal, but watching Spanish football at home. So amazing, really.
Scott, you want to say?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I mean, I played with Joe at West Ham, and Rob, I could have told you beforehand, he is one of the most down-to-earth guys ever. But you're right, the Premier League legend that he is, it was a little bit more refined when I got there, but still not absolutely fantastic. And I was touching beforehand about how you've got people who are doing this in their second language, so they were slightly nervous as well, but they were always really keen to do well. You know, I've got friends with so many of them, and probably Geisger's the main one, but so many lovely guys, apart from one. And do you remember Edgar Davids, Guillem?
I do.
So he must have just thought, I'm going to be on Sky Sports the whole of this particular Sunday, because he was on Goals on Sunday. He came out with an infamous quote, which I won't mention now. So everyone was kind of talking about him. And then I walked in before the show, and we went to go to the toilet, and he's there. I said, hi Edgar. Didn't want to sort of like look over anything, but I just said, hi Edgar, I'm Scott, and I'm the presenter. I'm really looking forward to you doing, you know, the 3 games. Long day for you, isn't it, with the 3 games? He said, no, I'm not doing 3 games. I said, well, yeah, we're doing 3 games. It's you, me, and Guillem. No, I'm just doing 2. Oh, okay. So I went out the toilet, spoke to Stevie. He said, Stevie, you know, he's thinking there's only 2 games. He went, oh, I don't know. Let's just wait and see. Anyway, he basically said towards the end of that second game, okay, that's me now. I'm done. And then the final game, you and I basically, you know, did it ourselves. So we had no kind of ex-player doing it. And even during it as well, let's just say he was slightly arrogant. But I think he was the only one that I can turn around and say, everybody else, they weren't just good guests, they were really good people as well.
Let me tell you one of those stories, and then let's chat to Nigel for a bit, because there was somebody else when David Bobbin was presenting that came over, that Jordi Cruyff, who's now the number 3 at the club at Barcelona, and didn't particularly like the long questions of David. So very at the beginning, he started answering with monosyllables. So it was like, so do you think that Barcelona, in the way they play, if actually they expose themselves, there will be goals conceded and the centre-backs will have to suffer, and how will they come out from that? I don't know. Would be the answer. Picked up by Devin again, or me trying to add something to it. He wasn't happy. It was a day, and he's a lovely guy, but that day he wasn't happy for whatever reason. But Nigel, we've mentioned the guests that we had, and one of the wonderful things of what happened when the guests came in, and it was Rafa Benitez, Cesc Fabregas, Joe Cole, Fabio Capello, and I can't remember which one of you were presenting the day that Fabio Capello was supposed to do the show, or if any of you were there. Anyway, I'll tell the story later. But one of the wonderful things, Nigel, was that how well the guests were looked after. It wasn't just the sandwiches. It's just that they felt really important. That was a very good thing. And they realized that they were walking into a living room of friends that they had been watching for previous weeks. It was like that, wasn't it? It was kind of a family feeling.
Yeah, I mean the Revista De La Liga set was laid out like a Spanish bar, wasn't it? So in a way, that might have relaxed them and got them more into a mood than a sort of a rigid desk and set. Although obviously those things can and do look fantastic. So yeah, and we try to look after them. We have the the poor old runners running around getting stuff. I remember one night, very embarrassingly, when Roberto was in, he was still playing in those days, so was really looking after himself and had his fitness as a player, asking for something from the canteen other than a sort of like a turned up sandwich or a packet of biscuits. And all he wanted was an omelette. So I sent the runner to get an omelette for him in the canteen. And the chef in the Sky canteen at that time, he just wouldn't do him an omelette. He said, no, we've stopped cooking now. And so I had to embarrassingly go back to Roberto and say, I can't even do you an omelette. So, but we did try and look after them, but that wasn't a time when it worked out quite.
By the way, one of the questions I get asked more often is that if the liquid that looked like wine was wine. And there was a time that it was wine.
Well, it wasn't in my time.
No, new time. In new time must have been what? Juice, some kind of juice. Raspberry
I would
juice
think it was orange juice, yeah.
or something that looked like wine. But
we would have loved it Scott, to be wine.
there was wine until I think one evening. Do you remember, Scott?
Well, if it's the one I was thinking, and it's definitely one thing I wanted to get out, even if it's the last thing I was going to say. But so was it something to do with Iniesta's wine initially?
Yes, we got him boxes from there.
Did Gibbo have something to do with Iniesta's wine?
Yes, he was telling them
there. So I don't know how Stevie agreed to do it, but we just thought, great idea. Again, Rob, it was still at the time where I was being chauffeur-driven in, so I could have a few glasses of wine.
that all makes sense now, Scott.
Yeah, exactly. No, but this is quite late on in the time as well. And obviously, it was brilliant doing Spanish football. And we just covered almost every game you could possibly cover in that particular weekend. It was a triple header on a Saturday, a double header on a Sunday, and a game plus Revista on a Monday. I mean, my goodness, it was so full on. But those triple headers could be long. So anyway, the wine came in, and we had Ozzy as a guest one time. Now, he loved his red wine. So, an Ozzy, incredible player, an even better person, really down to earth, lovely guy. His English is superb. It's just his accent. And as the more he was drinking wine, his accent was getting even stronger, Argentinian. It got to the point where the next show, Stevie said to me, look, just make sure he doesn't have too much wine, won't you? Because, we've only got like one bottle per program, even though we had more. So we're literally into a triple header. First half of the first game, he's done about 3 glasses of wine. And he's not slurring, but he's getting stronger and stronger. And in the end, I'm not sure if that was because of it, but quite soon after that, they said, look, there can be no more wine now, I have to say.
No. Jerry will bring wine for the Christmas special, and that will be drunk after, not during it. But Rob, I imagine you still get people saying to you, and I got it so many times, that Revista and the Spanish Football on Sky introduced Spain to the audience. And many people went to Spain or got into Spanish football and went to games. And some of them even got season ticket holders of Spanish clubs through what Sky did. Do you still get that? And do you think the influence was that big?
Yeah, I think it was. And we sort of introduced that map, didn't we? Which would sort of show where the grounds were. And tried to give us a little insight as well into it. This isn't just Deportivo La Coruña against Celta Vigo. What is it about this game, or Sevilla against Real Betis? And I think it was you, Guillem, who put me, before I started it, put me onto a book called Morbo, which is just a fascinating insight, because Spanish football is much more than I mean, Barcelona, Real Madrid is huge, but it's all the subplots and the drama and the history and the wonderful colour that goes with Spanish football, and we definitely tried to sort of portray that and to get people's interest in Spain and what is the difference between La Coruña, say, and Andalusia, and the sort of different vibes that you get from each of those places. And I think you're right, Guillem. It made people go, wow, because you have the map sort of zoom in onto where the ground was at Riazor or somewhere, and there'd be some sort of external shots of the ground. It gives people a feel of actually being there and being a part of it and understanding the history and tradition of everything that goes with La Liga, because it is, I mean, Barcelona say more than a club. Spanish football is more than just a game, isn't it? It's all the subplots and the lovely sort of tales on the side of every game.
Nigel, as a producer,
I was just going to say, Ben Miller used to spend a lot of his time out of season going around shooting a lot of those places and getting all the colour of those places so that we could use them throughout a bit of a bleak English midwinter or something like that. Sorry, Guillem.
In fact, with Ben Miller and Nick Bolger, our producer and cameraman back in Spain, I used to travel every week to Spain, every week. That meant 3 days of my life to get there. There wasn't so many flights, to spend the whole day traveling and interviewing, and that's how a lot of relationships were created, and then coming back for a minute and a half of television. Because at the time there will be a lot of footage that will bring back to the UK, and you would say, right, yeah, that's great, yeah, a quote here, that quote from whoever it was that we interviewed, and that's about it. That's what we used to do, and the rest were thrown away. That was something that obviously has changed. Now will be plastered in all the social media, etc. But Nigel, what percentage did you have, and tell us a little bit about them and your relationship with them?
Well, Rob, I've got to be careful because Rob was my first presenter. No, he was lovely to work with. Lovely to work with. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and then Mark Bolton basically followed on. He was good to work with as well. He'd come down, I think, to work for Sky from ITV Central in the West Midlands. So yeah, I joined in 2004, which was an exciting era. As Rob said, it was the era, or the first era of the Galacticos, when Florentino Perez was in his first spell at Real Madrid, and we had also Joan Laporta at Barcelona, and those wonderful players like Ronaldinho and Deco, Eto'o, Messi was just starting to create a stir, you know. So they were great times, and the show was so well respected, and you know, we actually got Joan Laporta came in as a guest when he was on a business trip to London. We got him in as a guest. Also, Ramon Calderon came in. He followed on from Florentino Perez, who's now, of course, back at the club and Super League ambitious, isn't he? But yeah, and we had just wonderful times. You know, thinking of the guests. You know, Gus Poyet came in. There was John Toshak, Albert, Chappie Ferrer. Just loads. Steve McManaman around at that time. It was. Do
you know one of the things that I admire of the producers, and that will go for you, for Dave Lawrence, for Mark Scott, for Mark Payne, for Stevie, for everyone, is that you managed to create. We all had this little island and had hardly no relationship to Sky, but your role was to actually protect us. So we could do our own thing a little bit. Perhaps at the beginning because nobody was watching, not even in house, but later because it was different to whatever else he was doing, with journalists being introduced, with guests having been treated a little bit different, hearing from them in a different angles, doing our own little stories. So that was part of the job you were doing, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. You know, we just I mean, but again, it's down to contacts, and you had those, wonderful sort of contacts, really. You were seeing a lot of these people, not only in Spain, but at, say, Champions League matches in the UK as well. And that's how, we were able to attract them in. But we tried to do it is a different atmosphere, when we, as Joe Cole was mentioned there by Rob, we try to find out what they liked about, what they loved about Spanish football, what attracted it, them to it, what they thought of certain players and clubs and managers. And that all made for something different from what those players were being quoted on in the tabloids, when they were talking purely about, from a Chelsea point of view. So you saw, a little bit, something a bit more different, about those people and got to know them better, perhaps, as people, really.
Yeah. Scott, Rob, a question for both of you. Revista de La Liga broke news at the time. We told the story of Cristiano Ronaldo joining Real Madrid, or we told the story of Cesc going to Barcelona, or Fernando Torres going to Chelsea, and many more. But we couldn't do a Revista anymore. That was a product of its time. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think nowadays with social media, there was some stories that you sat on for a day or so, and you could kind of, even though obviously social media was around then, it wasn't that long ago, but you could sit on those type of stories and save it for Revista. Nowadays, you just can't do that, not in that types. And I genuinely believe that Revista would have evolved. It still would have been a very good show, would have looked different to how it would have been from the beginning, and certainly in the middle as well, because, you were there behind it, and you wanted it to be, and we all wanted it to be the best possible show around. We just felt it was really important. It was our Premier League. It was our major, league that we're working on. And that's the way I always felt as well. I talked about at the beginning, I didn't know much about Spanish football. At the end, when I went on to the English football in the EFL and ended up doing the Carabao Cup as well, it was like it was a family. It was. It was like it was my football, Spanish football, and I was leaving my football to do something, even though I felt professionally it was the right thing to do, to move on. And I felt, and I think it's proven to be the case, it wasn't given enough credence within Sky. And yet the people, Guillem, I still have people. I had someone come up to me literally last weekend saying, "What about Revista? How good was that?" And I'm like, "That's amazing you're saying that, because I haven't done that for 6 or 7 years." It was so iconic. I remember traveling to a game in the EFL up north and sitting on the train with someone, and they said, "Look, can I come and sit next to you and talk football?" I said, "Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to talk about Spanish football and Revista and the stories behind it and everything." And I think it was very, very iconic. And I was very aware that I was going into something that was a fantastic product, and I just wanted to do it justice.
Yeah.
In fact, Rob, it would have evolved as well.
Yep.
I've got to leave you in a moment, guys, because I'm about to run out of battery. But I was interested in what Scott said there. I remember being on holiday one time. I don't really go to posh places on holiday, but I managed to wangle my way into this nice swimming pool. And Danny Murphy was there. And he was a Liverpool player at the time. And I was in the pool, and he comes swimming up. I never met him before. He's a lovely fellow. He comes swimming up and he goes, "Right, tell me about Rafa Benitez. I've watched him I've watched his Valencia side a lot on the Spanish football. He was about to go to Liverpool to take over at Liverpool. He was going, I need to know everything before he arrives." So it showed that everyone was watching. And I heard Nigel mention, and you mentioned John Toshak. And for Nigel, and John Toshak was a great guest to get in. But for a producer, he must have been a nightmare, because I don't know if he's got one now, but he insisted on not having a mobile phone.
Correct.
Yeah. So he would never, and it was always, you'd be there, preparing to go.
I had to arrange to pick him up at outside a match that he'd been at that Saturday
it was always a toss-up whether he's
Chelsea.
It was always a toss-up of whether he's going to turn. You never knew whether he's going to turn up. Is John going to be here? Or
and he didn't know much about timing, about television timing. Yeah. He didn't know that we had to go to a break. He didn't care. By the way,
most wonderful guest. So,
we send our love to
run
John.
Out of battery, so I've got to say
Rob,
goodbye. Thank you so much.
It's good to see you. Thank you for popping in. Oh, and he's gone. I was going to say, I'm sorry, Scott. And we've got new guests. So, Scott, goodbye. Oh my God! Rob Palmera, Roberto Palmera.
Sorry.
Roberto Palmera says Rob Palmer, who's still learning about Spanish football quite clearly.
I'm just always reading, Guillem. Always, you can never learn enough.
That's the first version as well of it. That's growing like twice. It's got twice the size. Marcelino Elena as well, one of the regular guests of Revista and Spanish football.
That's the signed version.
Signed one. That's the special. That's the special one.
It's worth a lot of money, that Guillem.
That's the special one. So let's start with you, Rob.
Guys, get on. I will say
Nigel.
goodbye now, but
Nigel,
brilliant, and I should be watching Rob. I should be watching.
Lovely seeing you.
Thank you very much.
Lovely seeing you, Nigel. You would have sacked the cameraman for that particular angle had it been on Revista, wouldn't you?
Yeah. All the best.
And
guys.
Rob is on, and we like that. Remember, by the way, just a quick reminder that we're doing this because we love each other, and if we don't do it this way, we're not going to meet again. But also to get funds for Ukraine. So have a look at the description below. You've got all the links that you need, and this is the information there. It's a good opportunity to help people in Ukraine. So go and check it out. But Rob, let's start with you because you started it all. You were in Granada with Jerry '96, telling us about Spanish football first of all.
Yeah, well, my Spanish football started at Granada Television up in the northwest of England, where we used to get the highlights literally flown across on a plane on a Sunday night, and we used to get them on a Monday, turn them around. And then we went to a Spanish restaurant owned by George Best, Harp, as it was called in Manchester. That came from nowhere. And we used to film with the likes of Adrian Heath and Howard Kendall. So we first of all brought Spanish football to the UK in the northwest. It was the only place you could see it in England. There was a Welsh version, Scorcher, I think it was called. And then we all came to Sky Sports, and I think it was the 96-97 season that one of the executive producers at Sky said, look, we know you want to commentate, and we've got a bunch of Spanish waiters kicking a beach ball around, but if you want to get involved, you can. And it turned out that was the very first season. The great Bobby Robson was the manager of Barcelona. I remember one day calling him up, ringing Barcelona, asking if we could get put through to his office, and Bobby answering the phone himself, inviting us over. And we went over and filmed him on a Monday night against, it was Extremadura that were playing, and he brought this goofy little teenager over and said, remember this lad's name, he's just come in from Holland, he's a Brazilian kid, speaks no English, but he's going to be a superstar. And he's, Ronaldo, come here. And the original Ronaldo came over and we filmed him, and nobody knew anything about him at that point, and they just signed Luis Figo as well. So that was our kind of initiation and our first ever season in La Liga, and then it all took off after that.
You are the longest commentator that we had in Sky from Spanish football. You back doing Spanish football now with ESPN as well. So Spanish football was never too far away from you, because you even got a place in Malaga, which is where you hide, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my hiding hole over in La Cala de Mijas down in Andalusia as well. And as you know, my son Ellis, who probably will make a guest appearance in the background here, thanks to the influence of the likes of yourself, decided that he was going to study Spanish when he was at school, and then headed off to Barcelona for his gap year, and then got a chance to go to Cambridge, but decided that he would study Catalan politics, believe it or not. So, you had a big influence, and Spanish football's had a big influence on the family, and that the boy not only speaks Spanish, but he's fluent in Catalan as well, and he could fill the whole podcast on Catalan politics.
That's crazy, but think of one or two, because you're a very good storyteller, one or two anecdotes of your time there while I speak to Marcelino, because Marta, you used to come regularly to both Revista and the weekend shows, and we already been touched on the fact that it was in everybody's houses, that especially the weekend, but also Revista. What do you think it was? What do you think we were doing, all of us, to attract the attention of so many people?
Well, I think that the quality of the show was superb, and I think that's what first of all what attracted the audience. I think you promoted the Spanish football around in the UK, and it was a way to, or the best possible way to introduce the Spanish football that at a certain point was quite unknown in England, in Britain, and not just the football itself, but probably the culture, the Spanish culture. You were talking before about knowing what the difference is between Andalusia and the north of Spain, or between Catalonia and the Canary Islands. Spain is a country that offers a different type of cultures and weathers and climatology, everything. So it's very different to play from a club in the Basque Country to play for a club in the Canary Islands, for example, and that's all what you introduce to the audience to, and I think it was a great way for the British audience to discover not just the Spanish football but also Spain.
One thing that we all did, I think, we went the extra mile. Martha, you did. Rob, you did. There was more work than we needed to do to actually make sure that everything was at the standards that you're talking about. And in your case, Rob, your preparation was amazing. By the way, you also presented some shows, didn't you? You weren't just the commentator.
Yeah, whenever anybody ever went down here, I was kind of roped in to present it, and it was kind of little known that before Scott came as well. One year they offered me the chance to present the Spanish football and Revista as well. But to be honest, as you can see, I'm much better behind the microphone than I'm in front of a camera. I can't wear a shirt and get away like you do, Guillem. When you're doing the Spanish football, you're kind of starting with a blank sheet of paper, which is what we did back in the mid-90s, that nobody knew about Spanish football. As Marcelino says there, it's not just a footballing education. When you come up with a place, I did Cadiz last night, and you're talking about Cadiz and the history of Cadiz and where it is in the country and what the values are as well around there. And you talk about places like Elche, and it's putting places on a map and kind of painting that picture with words as well. And then also when you get the players, and did the Cadiz Barcelona game last night, first time they've ever won a game there. If you don't know that going into the game, you're going to look pretty silly. So there was so much work that you had to put in, but it was great. And I, anybody that watched Revista, or not Revista, but the live games as well, was an absolute geek, and they absorbed everything that you could come up with. And the professionals like Marcelino and Roberto Martinez, and we had guest spots from Steve McManaman, Steve Archibald used to come in as well. Anybody was involved in Spanish football on Sky over the years, and a whole generation. My lad's 27 years of age. You think of that generation that from the 90s and then the noughties and the 2010 were brought up with watching it. And we are now part of the FIFA generation. And everybody has got a Spanish team. It's either Barcelona or Real Madrid, or they've adopted Real Sociedad, or Betis seem to be the most popular as well. And then the Guiris down in Malaga, in Andalusia, that followed Malaga Football Club all around Spain as well. I mean, there's probably a book to be written about it. And I could think of nobody better to write the book than you, Guillem.
Maybe one day. But if we're going to write a book, we're going to have to tell the stories, some of the stories that you're going to tell us now, especially because you did most of the big games. Kevin Keatings did a lot of them. Hello, Kevin.
Hola, mi amigo. How are you?
Recognizable voice, as so is Rob. But we say
hi, Rob. Hi, Marcelino. Lovely to see you again.
Great to see you.
Rob did a lot of shows with Jerry Armstrong. A lot of shows with Jerry Armstrong. I don't know if you counted them, but plenty of them. And I'm sure you two, in your Clásicos, some of them done, especially in the last years, a lot of them done on site. You must tell one or two stories of that period.
Well, I mean, the stories about Jerry. I mean, Rob and I could be here all day telling stories about Jerry. I mean, Jerry, I'm forever grateful, because he was the man that got me into Sky to do Spanish football, because he and I worked at Eurosport, and he was telling me about the good times he was having with Rob and doing when the Spanish football first started. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great? Because I had a great passion for, and I've always had a great passion for foreign football, in inverted commas. I've always sought to get knowledge and always thirsted for knowledge outside of England, because I go back long enough to remember the Di Stefano, Puskas, Gento, Real Madrid side, which was my earliest memories of seeing a foreign team and thinking, my word, this is just out of this world. I mean, I'd never seen anything quite like it. And we all know they went on to win 5 straight European Cups. So, I had this great thirst for knowledge. I watched as much as I could. And of course, in those days, back in the 90s, there was hardly any football. I didn't have Sky when it first came out, so I wasn't seeing what Rob and Jerry were doing and on those early commentaries. But Jerry would tell me all about it at Eurosport, and I said, well, look, if you ever get a chance or there's an opening at any time, just put a word in for me if you can. And Jerry's a great guy, and he'll always look to help you and do anything for anyone. And as luck would have it, I think it was Ian Crocker at the time who was doing, Rob will remind me, I think he was doing some Spanish football, and he went over to the Football League. And I think Guy Havard, who was mainly a reporter, but he came in and did some around about that time. And then I eventually got a way into Sky, and I did the Bundesliga for the first year I was there, because they took those rights for 1 year. But only for 1 year. They didn't extend them beyond that first season. But as luck would have it, Ian Crocker, at the end of that Bundesliga season I covered, moved to the Football League, as I said, and then there was the opportunity, and the bosses were happy enough with what I did on Bundesliga, and they said, well, look, would you like to do the Spanish? Well, boy, would I like to do the Spanish, and that was my way in. And go on.
Sorry, Rob, just staying with Jerry for a second. Rob, tell us, I'm desperate for you to tell us one of the 100 stories you've got with you and Jerry. Just one for now.
There are so many stories about Jerry. I was just thinking of one we were telling the other day, actually, that Jerry knew everybody in football. The fact that he brought Kevin in there, that he knew everybody behind the scenes as well. And once he said, I tell you what, he said, Real Madrid want to have a global footprint around the world. The president, Florentino Perez, has just taken over, and he wants to get them known. And Jerry arranged for us to go over there by Michael Robinson, who's a great footballer and broadcaster himself over in Spain. And Jerry took us over, and I thought this was Mickey Mouse stuff that Jerry was coming up with. We're going to interview with Florentino Perez, and I said, yeah, sure, we have Jerry. And Luis Figo. And bear in mind, it was the week that Luis Figo was playing for Real Madrid against Barcelona. He just left. And Butragueño is going to give us a tour of the stadium, and we already had Steve McManaman set up. And Jerry took us over there with this itinerary. Sky Sports couldn't believe that we were going to come away with this, and they thought, yeah, you just try to get a free kind of 3-day trip over to Spain. And we did it. Jerry got us there through his pal in Madrid, and we went up to the 37th floor of Florentino's apartment block of offices in the middle of Madrid. Interviewed him in there with a guy with his hand in his pocket, probably had a gun there, and maybe he's just filling his heart, I don't know. And then the next day we went, and Butragueño gave us a tour of the stadium and took us and showed us the museum. And then the very next day we went to the Real Madrid training ground, and the guy there says, you're not interviewing Luis Figo, no chance, no way, amigo. And then Jerry kind of brought out this kind of official piece of paper, and we were treated like lords. And Jerry just opened these doors. But I love the only bit of feedback we ever got from Sky is apparently when we were doing the walk around with Butragueño and it was raining, I didn't have a Sky Sports umbrella. So it was the only criticism they could find. But Jerry would open doors there, and he just filled the air with his enthusiasm. And I don't know if he's ever mentioned that he actually played for Mallorca way back in his career.
He's mentioned it once or twice. And
yeah, one of the memories, Rob, as well, and you remember this, Guillem too, I think, was you remember the times when Jerry was both the pundit and the commentator, and he would go up and down the ladder. Do you remember the ladder to the co-coms box, and then he'd have to leg it down for the half-time punditry? I mean, he was the man for all seasons, wasn't he? What a guy!
There was one guy, when Twitter was first invented, there was a guy on Twitter that first came on, and he used to get very upset that Kevin and I were not at the games, and he would get very irate that you were pretending to be there. I mean, most of the English football that's broadcast around the world, the commentators aren't there because you can't fit 82 different countries in the commentary box at Anfield tonight for, say, the Liverpool Man United game. So Kevin and I would, I wouldn't say pretend, but we would commentate what was called off tube. So yeah, Jerry would do that. He'd be in the studio with his full makeup on, and then he'd rush up, and then about a minute into the game, he'd turn in, and occasionally he may have missed a goal or something like that. And then a minute before half-time, Jerry would have to get out again, and you'd hear him clatter the door. And if you were very, very careful listening to the commentary, and then he'd do that, and he'd be down there, and then all of a sudden he'd appear in the studio as if he'd gone from the San Mosh to the Sky Sports studios in the blink of an eye, in the Sky TARDIS. Hey, we've lost Guillem.
Yeah, we've lost the
director. We've lost the main man, right?
Rob, your time to present.
We were just saying, Kevin, that whenever anybody went downhill or anything like that, I was always the man to kind of fill in for Mark Bolton or for Scott Minto or whoever else as well. But Marcelino, when did you first become involved in the Spanish football? I mean, you'd be watching it as a player, wouldn't you, when you were up at Newcastle United, I guess?
Yeah, correct. And I was going to say before, it was great company for me at that time too, because it was a good way to keep watching the Spanish football, which at that time I couldn't do, because it's not like in those days where you can watch any game on stream or in this kind of digital platforms. It was not possible at that time, and the only way for me to follow La Liga was watching it on those shows on Sky, Revista La Liga, and it was my first memories of Revista La Liga was watching Guillem Balague, a guy called Guillem Balague, and Roberto Martinez, who, as we all know, arrived at Wigan with other two players, and that was a story that I knew, that there was another couple of players in a club at a lower division who were Spanish, and one of those guys was there with Guillem. That was Roberto Martinez at that time. Look at him now. So it's my first memories about Revista La Liga, and it was very, very nice to see the Spanish football explained that well, and it was a good feeling watching the professionalism and the depth in the comments and all that. We are talking about Guillem. Hello.
So every day around this time, Guillem goes off and has a siesta, no matter what he's doing, whether he's broadcasting the world or not. There are some Spanish traditions that have to be kept. He has a little kit, but he's back now.
I think it was quick. It was only 2 minutes siesta.
I think, Marcelino, going back to hearing what Nigel was talking about and what Guillem was saying about all the producers of the Spanish football and how welcome they made you, I'm sure that left an impression on you, and how friendly the setup was and how relaxed it was, really. I mean, we always tried to be as professional as possible, but it was such a relaxed and happy team, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, for me, I have to say it was a pleasure. It was a fantastic moment when I, or a few years that I was going to the shows. It made me feel welcome. It made me feel amongst friends, and above all, what I would say is, what I would I put or underline is the professionalism and how special everything was doing it on Sky. I have to say that I had some experience, because I was doing commentary, supporting the commentary on the Spanish Televisión Española, no? In the Spanish, how do you call it, Guillem?
Televisión Española. It's the BBC, Spanish BBC.
Yeah. And I was doing it for 2 years, a year and a half, and the difference was amazing. The difference when I arrived to Sky, and not just the studios, but the way the whole process was outstanding. And then the guests were also outstanding. For me, it was meeting guys like Osi Ardiles or Michael Laudrup, or even Chapi Ferrer, who I knew as a player I would have played against, Gus Poyet, etc. There's a long etc. of people. Also guys like Gary, who I knew from having him in the stickers from when I was younger, scoring his goal in the World Cup and playing for Mallorca. We had a common past too, and we knew common people. He had played with some people who was at the club at my times at Mallorca, etc. I mean, it was the whole thing was amazing for me. It opened, stretched my mind, stretched my networking, the people I knew, and it was really something that made me very happy, and I really miss it. It's something that I would have done for a long time, well, it ended up, but it's great fond memories that we all have about it.
I think we all miss it a little bit, and I know, guys, some of you have to go. When you have to go, just say goodbye. We won't keep you any longer. But in case Rob or Kevin have to go, I need to say that two things. Your voice comes up in movies, in documentaries, because you
we should be getting kickback for that, Guillem. I need a good agent. Do you know one?
I'm telling you, because you were the voice of Spanish football at the most important time of at least of our lives, for certain. And a sign of that is that for a while in Facebook, for instance, that 3 teams best followed in the UK were Manchester United, Barcelona, and Real Madrid, and people were in the streets with Real Madrid shirts, with Barcelona shirts. So we were creating your talent, your energy. The time, the kickoff times were important. What Sky was allowed us to do, all that, we created a special product that felt. But in Spain, they had no idea. They did not know that we actually, for the Anglo-Saxon world, not just for the UK, for the Anglo-Saxon world, that includes Scandinavia as well. They were watching Sky 2. We were just given 3 dimensions to Spain. But Martha, I mean, I don't know if you're aware of it, but I will go to La Liga, I will go to the federation and say, give us interviews, open doors for us, because we actually are bringing Spanish football abroad. And it was, oh, no, first it has to be Catalunya Radio and Radio Malaga, and then, local television, and then maybe you. So I was kind of fighting against the tide, and really the huge impression that what Sky have done with Spanish football in the Anglo-Saxon world is completely unknown, if you like, in Spain. You think that, Martha?
Yeah, for sure. And even myself, when I tell around that I've been doing those collaborations for a few years, obviously it is known in England, but it's not known at all in Spain, because it's not seen. I mean, if it's not seen, it doesn't happen. So how do you tell everybody here what you were doing over there? Is very difficult to put it in the context of the rest of the people in Spain, not just the watchers or the viewers, but by the football authorities or even talking about yourself, Guillem. I've told you a lot of times, you are a famous guy in England. You are just somebody in Spain, and that hurts me in a way, because when you say people that someone who's got 1 million followers on Twitter, it has to be somebody, not just I don't know how many journalists do have 1 million followers on Twitter, and there has to be a reason for that, and credibility, and the way you've done things for so many years. And well, how obviously Sky and Revista and the show and all the collaborators you've had around have helped you to achieve that too, I guess. But again, it's not known in Spain, and if somebody like you is not very well known in Spain, there's something to dig into that, all right? But
Marcelino, he is global. I've just, as you know, I'm doing it for ESPN now, and I met a young journalist, a Spanish journalist from Barcelona, whose ambition in life, and this lad has actually played for the Barcelona B team, so he's kind of lived the dream. His ambition in life is to be Guillem Balague.
Yeah, well,
tell him he's not recommended
anyway, is it?
He started wearing by flowery shirts, and he's kind of going from a base there.
That's how you start.
There isn't room for 2. Yeah, one's enough.
Yeah, can I ask you just a style thing as well? I mean, you helped bring Revista in the way that we brought Spanish football to the UK, and it wasn't really a thing back in the 90s, was it? For a journalist, I remember we had many conversations about this, about the journalist to be, or a correspondent to be in the studio. They had it a little bit on Galazzo back in the day when it was on Channel 4, but you developed that role, and now there are so many podcasts out there that I'm sure we all listen to on a daily basis, and there's Hold the Back Page on Sky, and it's taken off, and there are probably more journalists out there now making a living out of broadcasting than there are actually writing papers. But How important was that to you to kind of get that off the ground as well, and to evolve Revista in a way that kind of brought Spanish football and that Spanish culture to English TV?
I just felt that what we were doing with Spanish football needed that, because otherwise you end up just analyzing games. You needed to give it 3 dimensions. But you already hinted to it, Rob, that it wasn't an automatic choice by Sky at the beginning to do that. So battling against the tide is my favorite sport. And I knew that I had to knock a lot of doors to actually convince people that it was a good idea to have interviews, to bring people over, to get guests, even though they weren't English, and they weren't maybe even in the Premier League. And little by little, everybody got convinced. The same job I did with David Bobbin in the half an hour before the show, which was try to paint a picture that was attractive of Spanish football. So he got involved with the Spanish football, because at the beginning he wasn't that interested. I did with everybody else, with the people around, with the producers, with the bosses, and eventually with the audience. But they were very receptive, and there was, of course, we were helped by Champions League, starting in a big way, by Beckham getting to Madrid, and then the other things that happened there. But Kevin, I mean, in the period that you were there, we were aware, I think, all of us, that Spanish football were at its peak. Did you also, like Rob did certainly, and all the Spanish people that were involved in the show, make the Spanish football your own? Did you feel that you were actually part of that world?
Oh, definitely, without a doubt. I mean, I just, as I said, I was a fan of Spanish football, foreign football outside of England, before I ever did commentary on it. And yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the thing I'd like to say as well is how well we developed outside of Real Madrid and Barcelona, because La Liga, as was touched on earlier, it wasn't just about those two. Obviously, they were the 2 biggest clubs, but I mean, Rob and I did the years when Benitez's Valencia won the title twice, which was great to see, getting in between the big 2. Deportivo, that was before I started, but Rob will remember the great Super Deport team, and all those players. And I had a great soft spot for the Real Sociedad team. And just talk about teams for just a moment and some players, just briefly before I go. I loved that team that should have won the title in 2003. I think it was. Was it later? I think it was 2003, when they led the league at Christmas by 6 points. And what I loved about that Real Sociedad team was that it wasn't full of, it was a team in every sense. And there's a number of Spanish sides I could go on for a long time that I covered over the years who were just like that. They weren't full of the Galacticos, the big names, but they got the job done. I mean, Valencia weren't full of big stars. I mean, yes, there were some Spanish internationals in those La Liga successes under Benitez, but that Real Sociedad team, you remember Bjorn Tor Cavani, who was at Liverpool, who didn't pull up any great trees at Anfield? I mean, he was magnificent, alongside Yaregi at the heart of the defence. Then you had, it was all about partnerships. Xabi Alonso, who became the hub of that team, and of course went on to great things afterwards with Aran Baru in the middle of midfield. And then you had Kovacevic and Nihat, the 2 strikers who I think got nearly 50 goals that season. And the wonderful wingers, Carpin and Javi De Pedro, with that wand of a left foot. I mean, I've got so fond memories. Almost like yesterday, I remember that team. And so many others.
Before you go, Kevin, I want to say that both of you, Rob, Kevin, all the commentators, but especially you two, helped tell the story in such a wonderful way, because, as I was saying earlier, Kevin, you felt it was your league, and Rob, you really felt you were part of it, and you were creating a narrative, a story, a world, which we all embraced, and we all added our bit. And when the likes of Marce brought it to ourselves, because obviously he had been a player there and understood how to tell the story to the English too, we made that special. He was special. He felt special anyway. So before you go, Kevin, I wanted to say that.
That's very kind of you, Guillem. And I'll say goodbye, guys. I've got to go.
I'm enjoying Kevin's trophy cabinet behind. It's clearly not in the Sunderland boardroom, Kev, are you?
I wish. All the best, guys. Take care.
Bye, Kevin.
Cheers, Kevin. Thank you.
I can hang around for a while. I know you're trying to get Graham Hunter's trying to work out the technicalities behind the scenes. It's where a producer comes in.
Exciting.
Can I ask you another question as well, Guillem, about the styles as well? Because as you know, I spend a lot. He's the great man. The great man's arrived. Oh, Geraldo.
Hi, folks.
Standing ovation.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi, guys. How are you keeping? All right, Guillem. Hi, Rob.
You look stressed.
Hello, Jerry.
He's looking chill. Are you kind of lying by the pool or something, Jerry, in Mallorca?
No, I'm in my room. The music's too loud outside in the Hotel Martinique. I'm in Magaluf in Mallorca.
Really?
Mallorca.
Otra vez.
Terrible life. Jerry, I want you to tell the story now that you're with us. I want you to tell the story, if you can hear me, because I think my son is breaking down a little bit. That how you got into Sky. That's one of the great stories, isn't it?
It's a true story. My good friend, God rest his soul, George Best, had asked me to play in a five-a-side tournament in Battersea Park in London on a Sunday, and it was just for 15 or 20 minutes for Channel 4. And he said they want to know the benefits of small-sided games and why it's better. And I said, right, okay. And I said, this Sunday, and he said, yeah. So that was on the Monday, and then nothing from him on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the Friday I thought I'll give him a call. And I said, George, I'm still okay for Sunday. And he said, yes. He said, there's only one problem. I said, what is it? He said, I can't make it. And I said, right, okay. I said, who else is playing? He said, just you at the moment. And so I contacted Kenny Sampson and a couple of other guys, and they turned up to do the five-a-side. And afterwards, the producer said, what's the benefits of small-sided game? And I went, well, you get more touches on the ball. It helps you improve your skill and technique. And we were chatting away, and I said, over in Spain, when I played in Spain, I said, they play football sala. I said, with a smaller ball. I said, it's very popular. It's brilliant for improving your touch. And he said, yeah. He said, George Best was telling me, he said, you played in Spain. I said, yes. And he said, what are you doing this Saturday? He said, we've got we're first game we're ever doing in Spanish football in La Liga. He said, would you be free to come in as a guest and, chat about Spanish La Liga? And I said, yeah, because they didn't know anything about La Liga. And I said, yeah, I'll be glad to come along. So I came along, and that was the start of it. And afterwards, he said, that was good. He said, what are you doing next Saturday? So it just continued from that. And then about, I don't know, maybe 6 months or a year into it, Dave, who was our producer then, he said, I've been thinking, he says, about putting you up. He says, with Rob, he says, you can do the introduction and talk about the two teams and then go into the commentary box with Rob Palmer and do the co-coms with Rob. And that's how my partnership with Rob started. And that went on for over 20 years.
Because you kept me company, Jerry, because I think for the first season of Spanish football, you were virtually in the studio all of the time, and we used to commentate solo. So it was we were talking before you came on. I think I've been problems with Guillem. He's gone on for another siesta. That you would kind of do the pre-match in the studio, then you'd run up 2 flights of stairs, you'd commentate on the first half, go back down the stairs, back into the studio, keep David Bobin and Guillem happy, and then you'd be back to join us in the second half. So you were the fittest man in television.
I was, but the funny one, Rob, we lost the link, and I just arrived into the VO booth with you and sat down when they shouted, quick, Jerry, get back down again, we've lost the link. So I ran down the stairs out of breath, and as I come in, they got the link again. He says, quick, back up the stairs again. It was like back in training. I couldn't believe it, but it was fun. I mean, the development of Spanish La Liga football and everything that everybody did was a wonderful, wonderful journey for us all. And I have to say, I do miss it. And it's been at least three or 4 years now since we were back as a team, but we had great times together.
In fact, we more or less, all of us are involved with Spanish football still for many reasons. Rob is with ESPN. I know, Jerry, you're doing Champions League as well with Virgin. Is that right?
Yeah, Virgin Media. I do Champions League and Europa League as well, both, and Nations League, and World Cup qualifiers. I do all of that.
Marcelino and I are involved with La Liga TV, which is what Sky used to do, but now in a channel itself in the UK, and one that gives you 24 hours of Spanish football. But I asked this before. Did you feel that what we were doing in Revista and the weekend especially, but mostly Revista, is something that was a product of its time? We broke news we brought stories, we did a lot of things that wasn't done, but it is done now. So product of its time, maybe.
We were the forerunners. I mean, if you remember, do you remember we went to do and Real Madrid, and we arrived there and we went into the area for the press, and it was packed, and it was, what are we going to do here? And I said, well, they got a new manager. I said, he's been in charge 3 months. He was the director of football, and now he's the manager. And it was Lorenzo Serra Ferrer. I said, he's my mate from Mallorca. And he said, well, can we get a chat with him? So we went and had a chat, and he brought us into his office, and we were trying to get on the pitch, and we'd never been on the pitch before the kickoff. And he got us the yellow bibs, and we had the cameraman and yourself, Rob, and myself, and Guillem, and we went down on the pitch and had a ball. We bumped into Fernando Hierro, Steve McManaman, Raul, as they were coming up the steps past the little chapel. We interviewed them, and that was all going out live, and they had never, ever seen anything like that before. And I think Andy Melvin and Vic were blown out of the water and thought, this is different class. So they wanted to take it on to another level. And we started something that was special, I have to say.
That's it. I think have we got Graham already? Almost ready.
Is Marcelino going?
Yeah,
Marcelino is going.
I let you go.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, legend.
Graham!
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hunter!
I'm in reunion mode.
Oh, okay. But we have been trying to organize a meeting, but we haven't able to do it maybe this summer. But I'm so glad that you with us, Graham, because obviously we are talking Revista, we are talking about those discussions we used to have. The hour and a half before the show itself, the editing and the work that took place beforehand. So a lot of people may have watched the show, but tell us about what happened before the show to prepare the show.
I think that it was typical of Sky, certainly in those days. All of you on the screen right now, all of your guests this afternoon, but all the fans as well, who we hope are joining in, who we hope are going to donate and support Ukraine. The fact is that I think some of the affection that was generated for the show wasn't simply about the brilliance of Spanish football or how each of us tried our best to contribute in the right way, but the preparation was very professional indeed. And the two I worked with most, probably, Nigel was on earlier on, but probably the two I worked with most would be Steve Rowe and Mark Payne. It's nice to see Dave again there popping up on screen, but the preparation was really professional. That's what we're talking about, Dave. We're talking about brilliant. Guillem asked about brilliant preparation, and we spent hours and hours, whether it was a Monday or a Tuesday, working out what the running order would be, what we all wanted to say. I think it was produced really crisply, and I think that in all broadcasting, whether it's radio or television, and each of you know this, if the product is really good, as Spanish football was, then the Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. We had to be super sharp. The editing was brilliant. The footage was brilliant. We all worked on our contributions really hard. And I think Sky set up, that's the answer to your question, Guillem. Sky set up a really professional preparation system where we were there for hours. And by the time we went on, we had our game heads ready.
Dave, of course, hello Dave, was the first producer of Spanish football, and I'll come back to you in a second. We just got Graham, and I wanted to say, I mean, I've told you this many times anyway, but I look forward as much to the normally hour, but could be as long as an hour and a half editing meeting in which we will discuss what had to go in the show, what you wanted to say, what I wanted to say. It made me better as a professional to be prepared for those things. It made me better to hear you and to how you counter-attacked or said whatever I was proposing, and that also came into the show, that those sparks that used to be produced, not just in the show but before it as well. I really miss that time, because I think those, I don't know how to describe it, those intellectual clashes, knowledge clashes that we used to have.
No. Stop now. I'll let you go on. If it's an intellectual clash, I was always going to lose 2-1. Look, but before I get out of the way and let you speak to Dave, one of the things, if anybody is watching this having had huge affection for Rob and Jerry as a team, and you for the team leader in terms of making sure that people understood Spanish football culture, bringing ideas to the show. One of the things that people have often commented on, and it's mad the way you described it there, because TV and radio is often set up, it's prepped. When sparks fly, we all know, and all of the viewers today, who I genuinely hope will donate and support the cause, they might be a bit suspicious that you and I put on something theatrical at all. And people will make the mistake if they don't think that we are friends and that we've always got on, because that's also the truth. But for some damn reason, and I don't know why, I never ever felt that you were being contrary. I never manufactured a point of view. There was something about sharing the same experiences, matches, interviews over a revolving period of time, whereby often we just simply interpreted things differently, or maybe that we came from such different cultures because you grew up in Catalonia, I grew up in Scotland, and maybe all these things coming together. But you talked about being kept, you kept me on my toes. You made me think about things differently. But also the special chemistry is when we had presenters who just knew when to press and then set us up. I swear to everybody, and I bet you'll swear the same, it was never, ever, and it continues not to be manufactured on La Liga television.
Absolutely. Let's go back a few years earlier when Dave Lawrence was in charge of Spanish football.
A long time ago, Guillem. A long time ago.
It's some time ago.
He hasn't aged today.
Let me tell you, because you may not remember, Dave, but and you may add to it. But I was working for Don Balón, which is a football magazine. Now it's been taken by somebody else. It's not what it was. The magazine doesn't exist. And I rang Sky, and you picked the phone up saying, I want to do a report on Spanish football because you are doing Spanish football. And you said to me, yeah, no problem, come over. And come well dressed. I wasn't sure why, but of course, I had no proper clothes or no smart clothes. But a friend of mine did. A friend of mine who was... glasses, long hair, and anyway, came to the show thinking I was going to be shown around the gallery or the studios, the office, and you said, right, you sit here next to the presenter in front of the camera, and the show starts in half an hour. I'm like, what? And he says, but you've done this before, haven't you? Hundreds of times. And that was my debut in television that day. And at halftime, you said, look, we're starting a Spanish highlight show. Do you want to do it? And I thought of it for about a quarter of a second. So, yeah, I could do it. You had asked already 3 other people who said no to you. So I was lucky that nobody had said yes to that. So I'll never ever forget that. I may flourish my memory of that time, of that moment, but that's how I remember it. I don't know if you remember much of it, Dave.
Well, I'll be very surprised if I hadn't sort of like given you some indication you might be coming on the show. I mean, I can't believe I'd have just dropped you in like that, but that's how you remember it. That's how you remember it. I mean, you were an absolute godsend for me because obviously I inherited the Spanish football from Chrysalis, who'd done it the first season with Rob and Jerry, and thank God I inherited Rob and Jerry because without them in the early days I'd have struggled big time. As Jerry said in his book, which we just recently finished reading, by the way, Jerry, excellent read. We had a meet up, and I knew my football. I mean, I'd worked on football as an assistant producer. I'd worked on a lot of football for Sky before, but I'd never produced a football show. I was greyhound racing, I was horse racing, I was cricket, I was motor racing. So I was in need of help, and thank God I got it from Jerry and Rob. And then when you came along, you elevated the show to a different level. David, who you spoke about earlier, the much missed David Bobin, he wasn't keen. He'd moved on. He'd been pushed onto it from the rugby, which was his baby, really. And he made it clear to me, as he made it clear to you, that he wasn't going to do anything more than the bare minimum. And so we needed people like you three, and Graham, when you joined us later, to sort of like really give it the push and the expertise and the inside knowledge and in your case, Guillem, you know, what you didn't know about what was happening in the world of Spanish football wasn't worth knowing. So I'll be forever grateful that it may have been a lucky phone call or whatever, but we got you involved, and it's now history.
Now, all of you have to come up. Rob has already helped us with a couple of stories, anecdotes of that period. But all of you have to come out with something, a struggle, a moment of difficulty, something that came out. And Rob is volunteering for the first one already.
I want to ask Jerry a question, actually, and for years on, he can probably answer this now. On a Saturday night, if we went on and did the game at 8 o'clock, Jerry used to get text messages from a Premier League team, very well-known footballers, asking us for tips because they used to play their game on a Saturday afternoon. Then the lads, as they would back then, would go and replenish their bodies with fluids, and then they'd all have a bet on Spanish football. So, Jerry, who were those famous Premier League footballers that actually, and I think they took you out and treated you as well, because we used to give them some good tips, and they made a bit of money off the tips.
I went to their Christmas party, and it was Chelsea Football Club.
Chelsea. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I thought it was Frank Lampard.
It was John Terry. It was Frank Lampard, John Terry, and the boys. But it was done through Jamie Redknapp, because he's a cousin of Frank. And Jamie would phone me and say, Jerry, the boys love having a gamble, like on some of the games. And, you know all about La Liga. What do you fancy this tonight? And I give them 2 or 3 tips. And the 2 or 3 tips came up. And then the following week, it was the same. I got a phone call again. It was the same. And it went on for several weeks. And then there was one game, which was Real Madrid were at home to Valencia. And I fancied Valencia because Piojo Lopez was the flying machine in the wing. And he was sitting halfway line. And once he got the ball, nobody was going to catch him. And I could see Valencia were great on the counter-attack. And I said, you know what? I fancy Valencia to beat Real Madrid at the Bernabeu tonight. I think they were either like 11-2 or 9-2 to win. And they had a few quid on it, and as a result of it, I was the best thing since sliced bread. So the following week, I went to their Christmas party, and it was a sight to behold, I have to tell you. But they loved it.
I imagine, and I know this from you, Jerry, and Rob as well, Graham too, that we got a lot of calls at the time from football clubs asking for information about players, not so much, or not only about what they were like, but generally what we thought of them as players, something that they could see themselves. Obviously, all that is gone because the scouting has changed completely. But Brian, you must have got dozens and dozens of calls from people saying, what do you think about that guy? And you recommending some even.
I'll tell you, the first thing that all of you will laugh at me for, but everybody that's watching needs to understand, when you go on a television product like Revista and you don't actually make a hash of it, it completely changes people's perspective of you. I had been a print journalist. You got a little byline at the top of a newspaper article. People might like it, they might not. But if you're in the corner of their room, in this little box called a television, then suddenly, and this applies very much to the football industry, you're okay. You're kind of one of us. So yes, you're right. The number of times when either somebody said, how does this guy play? What's he like? What's that club like? Can you get us access? Or we want to come and watch this guy secretly. We don't want to ask the club for tickets. Stuff like that happened all the time. But also stuff like, truthfully, one of the biggest things that I can say about Revista and the live match coverage is that some people say I didn't deserve this. It gives all of us a little badge of credibility where people in the football industry in the UK suddenly look at you completely differently, and not simply as a source of information. They're up for your views and your analysis. And I'll close off by saying this just now by saying, you asked for little anecdotes. I'll give you 2. I want to commend one of our directors, Jules. I'm certain his name was Jules, and he used to have this brilliantly measured voice whereby he only told you the very necessary information. So when Sky started to commission, if you guys were in a studio and I happened to be in Valencia or Seville and they wanted a 6-7 minute slot from me, they would hire a satellite and I'd be stood out somewhere iconic, and I couldn't really see or hear the show all that well, and Jules would just be in my ear going, speak now. There are really good Tom Hanks interviews on Graham Norton about Clint Eastwood and how he directs something, and he goes, okay, speak now. And at the end he'll go, that's enough of that. And that's what I got in my ear. I got Joe Big Clint Eastwood going like, coming to you now, Graham. Not tons and tons of information. It was brilliant. And one other little thing, Guillem, I don't know on this occasion where you were, but for one time in the entire relationship I had with Sky and Revista, I was sent to do a feature up at Athletic Club. They were playing somebody, and it was like the city, a little bit of the training ground, one or two Ira bars, an interview, and then match day. You know, you talked, Jerry, about like being on the pitch at Mallorca against Real Madrid. For some reason, in old San Mames, I had to do a little bit of work with JP, our Mexican friend over here, cameraman, and it was old San Mames. And I should have worn boots and studs. I was up to my shins in mud, trying to get up and down along the touchline on the non-playing side, I must admit. But I was like, how did touchline reporters do this all the time? Now movement and access is much more limited. But in those days, you were wandering around with a camera, and I tell you, I came back and the bottom, this section of my legs was mud brown. But every single second of it was so much fun. So much fun.
Dave, you were part of one of the, I'd say, iconic shows of Revista. We interviewed David Beckham. We went to Madrid. It was the first interview he gave, and we were having wine and ham, and there was a little bit of an editorial battle because the show was 1 hour long. And what do you remember of it, and what came out of it on that show?
Well, I remember everything changed completely when Beckham went to Madrid. All of a sudden, everybody. Mr. Martinez.
Friends, good afternoon.
Hombre.
Glad to hear so many stories.
Mark.
Hello, Mark.
Hola.
We just interrupt you. You were in the key moment.
Yeah, sorry, Dave.
No, I mean, to be honest, Guillem, I don't remember an awful lot about it, other than it was always a battle to get more time for things. You know, it was always a battle. But when David Beckham went to Real Madrid, the thermometer just went through the roof as far as the bosses were concerned. All of a sudden, we'd been doing the best we could with what we had, but all of a sudden, they were interfering all the time. I don't know if you remember, we had to do a Beckham watch. So it didn't matter what he did in a game. If he just kicked the ball into touch, we had to clip that up and show that. And it was part of the Beckham watch. And it was just madness. All of a sudden, it was a different level. In fact, it was my last season as producer because Nigel Dean came in for the second season. Beckham was there. But that interview, I have vague memories of it, but I'm afraid I'm not 100%.
I'll tell you. Hello, Terry, and I'll tell you very quickly. Basically, we had a meal in one of the asadores in Madrid, and of course, at that time, you would travel to Spain and have an hour interview with someone for a minute and a half or 2 minutes of television. And our battle was to convince the bosses that had to be an hour show special about David Beckham, a Revista De La Liga special, perhaps the first one and only one we did. And eventually you and Stevie Rowe, who edited, I think, the interview, managed to make it a whole hour of David Beckham with a long hair and having some wine and some ham and really landing in Spain. So that was my memory of it. But we've got Roberto here, who, of course, was I think, in my eyes, let's see what Rob and Mark and Dave are saying, but the best prepared guest we've ever had. And that was the second best prepared guest. And the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. It was just unbelievable, the work you did, Roberto. Just remind us of your time in La Liga and Sky Sports.
Oh, hi, Guillem. It was a fantastic experience. For me, it was almost... I was training and playing games, and then my opportunity to go down to London and get to that tunnel is almost a machine of the time. I would get transported to Spanish football to my young years. And it was a unique opportunity to study the players, to look at the coaches, what they were playing, how they were playing. So it was almost an opportunity to get attached to Spanish football. When I arrived to the UK in the British game, it almost feels that, wow, do we play the same game in 1995? What we were told in Spain is it was a crime to give the ball away. And the first thing I arrived in the British game is I need to put the ball forward quicker than I can into the box. So it was wonderful for me to arrive. And I must admit, and it's you can see it now, the relationship that you all have and you treasure, the human quality that you put in that program. Everyone cared so much about Spanish football that you felt that you had to be prepared to at least open that window to Spanish football. At that point, there was not the opportunity of being able to see the games in Spain as much as there is now. It was only Italian football a little bit, and then not a lot of information in Spanish football. And we had a huge responsibility the way I saw it. We have to present the clubs well. We have to present the clubs in a similar level. We cannot just speak about Barcelona and Real Madrid. I think we need to speak about how Real Sociedad are getting there, how Deportivo can win the league. And I think I found it a good opportunity to educate myself. But I must admit, and Dave, obviously, I'm sure you were a key figure in bringing people in that they shared the passion for Spanish football, but the quality of the person was an enjoyable experience for me.
I know, Roberto, you don't have a lot of time, so I'll stay with you for a couple of questions more before we let you go. But I imagine that helped you as well to be able to be concise and to have a clear idea what you wanted to say beforehand, and then saying it in the right way. So all that helped you as a coach.
Two things. And it helped me most than I thought, and it prepared me a lot. First is I had to study managers. To a player, when you're a player, you just get on with it. You just do your role, and that's it. If I'm a number 6, I'm a number 6. If that's my role, I do my role. But when you cover games, you need to understand what the coach is trying to do, how the manager sets the team, what's the philosophy, does it match with the history of the club, and I think it gives you a perspective that it made me appreciate a lot more what I was doing in my club when I was a player. And then the other one is learning English. I got to a point that my English was my English. I had my 3,000 words and I was getting on, and every day I could do my things. Now, when you are in front of the camera, you cannot use the 3,000 words. You have to go 5,000, 6,000. Not to the Rob Palmer's level. It goes to 15,000, 10,000. For Graham Hunter, it goes into 4,000. But it's more. It made me think in English. Up to that point, I always say that I learned English. I was translating. I was thinking in Catalan. I was translating in English. And when I started working for La Liga in Spanish football in Sky, I started to think in English. Up to a point that I ended up dreaming a home in English, and then I knew, okay, now I can think in English.
And I think this is a good forum, Rob, to tell that Roberto never forgot those times. That if any of you here gives him a call, he always answers and he's always available for events and things. And especially with you, Rob, he's given you a hand in one or two, hasn't he?
Roberto, a show of Roberto's class, I think probably 8 or 9 years ago now, wasn't it? We had a Revista reunion for the charity up here, and Terry came along, and you came along, Jerry came over from Ireland, and we invited Roberto, and he said, yes, of course, I'll come over. And then what we didn't realise, it was actually 2 days before the cup final. And Roberto had said there'll be no interviews for the media, where we're doing everything on the Monday and Tuesday, and that's it, blanket, which we fully understood. Halfway through the evening at the Village Hotel on the Bromborough, there's me, you, and there's Terry, and we're holding court, and then suddenly this kind of apparition appears in the background, and it's Roberto, and he'd driven all the way from Manchester to the Wirral, which is a good kind of 60-minute drive, just to say hello to the guys and to support the charity as well. 2 days before they played, I don't know how you got into that cup final. They played in the cup final. I think you did okay, didn't you?
Not sure it was a tough game. I don't know. I don't remember.
but an absolute quality individual. I mean, we know now what a great manager he is, and managing the best team in the world according to FIFA. But just one of the best people in the world as well. That Roberto started when he was, I think, we were at Chester City. I mean, we go back to your very first day in the country when the three amigos came in and we did a photo shoot at Wigan. And don't worry, Roberto, I've still got that tape in the bottom drawer. Nobody's ever going to see that.
I've got my career is in your hands, Rob, because for a Spaniard to be on the shoulder of a donkey in Wigan Town Centre, I'm sure that's a shot that is speaks in 1,000 words.
Before we let you go, Roberto, I'd like you to tell us from the other side how the treatment that Sky Sports gave Spanish football and the show Revista itself was seen in the by footballers, by coaches, by managers. It was something that was watched. The time was perfect because it was the end of Saturday, the end of Sunday. It was a couple of games. They didn't have to change the channel, but they were also hooked to it. It was more than just watching football for them, wasn't it?
Well, I think it's hard to explain, but I think a football person relaxes watching football, but relaxes watching football that you're not attached to it, that you don't follow it, that your result doesn't matter. And I think a lot of football people in the UK at that time involved in British football, they would disconnect by watching Spanish football. And I think La Liga brought a different style. You're defending with the ball, you're working in a different way that everyone was quite stimulated. You can agree or disagree, but it's something that it would get a little bit of a feeling that you can relax by watching good football, good individuals. And that was the beginning of opening what's been a big amount of Spanish players coming to the British League. So I do think that what Sky Sports did, it was probably it reached the level that nobody expected. At the beginning, it was maybe showing a league, but because the people behind it was so caring and the passion came across that screen, I think a lot of people bought into that idea. And now it's wonderful to watch the style that we thought in 99 or 98 when it started to show in Spanish football. Now you can see it in the Premier League and some of the leagues. You can see some of those traits that Spanish football showed and was so strong to. But it was a way to disconnect by watching football. I think all of you did an incredible job to do that.
Mark Scott, one of the producers, historic producers of Spanish football and Revista as well. I don't know if you had Roberto as a guest every now and again, or you did.
No,
same as Dave as well. But he must be the lowest maintenance guest in the history of the show. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And I think Rob used the word class. I mean, fantastic. I remember him now in the studio, and I could see his brain working. You could see what he does now in the studio, and he talks about the philosophy, and it was always about what the manager was trying to do, always what they're trying to achieve. That came across just in the conversations. They were the really enjoyable bits for me, aside from being on air, going in the studio with you guys and hearing Roberto and the other guys as well. But yeah, Roberto class, that's the easiest way to describe him.
And Dave, Mark, who were the most difficult guests you ever had to deal with?
For me, and we spoke about John Toshak earlier. I just remember John Toshak. It was brilliant to listen to in the studio, but it was in the green room. I just remember him one day coming in. I think it was the first time we met, and he kept trying to restart the conversation, saying, "Look, make sure you speak about 100 points or 100 goals, my Real Madrid title winning," and just trying to set the agenda, but not in a nasty way. There were no difficult guests on the Spanish. No Edgar Davids in my tenure, that's for sure. Listening to Scott earlier,
but
no.
By the way, Dave, before you say, we send our love to John, who's had a really difficult COVID and still trying to recover from it. He's getting better, so you all have his number. So I'm sure they'll appreciate a message from you. But Dave, you were out to tell us.
It's about time I left now because I've been on long enough. But Roberto may not remember this, but the first time I met him was when you took us to a Spanish restaurant, Guillem. There was Jordi Cruyff, Albert Ferrer, and Roberto, and you were basically saying to me, these could all be good guests on the show. So what better way to sort of like show them in action? Come to a Spanish restaurant. We brought a camera along. You did some interviews with it, and that was when I first met the three of them, and all three of them then became regular guests. And as Marcus just said, absolute class. Roberto always was, always is, and always will be, I'm sure.
And look at them now, the three of them. Where they are now.
Everything started in the restaurant. Everything started there.
Everything started there. It was three of them hard workers. Three of them who put a lot of work into it. So it wasn't just them coming with their pretty faces. It was just a lot of work behind it. Terry, hello. We haven't said hello to you yet.
Good afternoon,
you have
everyone.
You have to tell us a moment in Revista that is memorable. something that we haven't heard yet and you want to share with the audience?
Well, my best moments, to be honest, have always come when someone else has dropped out and I've been called up at late notice. So it's been quite useful to be that guy that's willing at the drop of a hat. And so I think it was Michel Salgado dropped out of a COCOMS gig when Barcelona played Real Madrid, when it was Pep against Jose. It was a Monday night game and I got a call. I think I'd just been to work at Sky covering the games. It was midnight and Stevie Rowe called. My phone rang and it was Stevie Rowe. It was gone midnight and I thought I'd done something wrong. And I think Michel Salgado played for Blackburn. I think they got beat about 6-0. And I think Sam Allardyce stopped him travelling to go to do the co-commentary. So in the late shuffle about, I was called up at late notice to fly out and commentate on one of the most memorable games probably that Sky have had in terms of watching, covering La Liga. So, if it hadn't been, I can't remember who beat Blackburn 6-0, but I'm extremely grateful.
Can I ask you a quick question about you and Roberto as well? As I know we got Roberto and his time is very precious. How did Guapa come about? Because that became a legend, didn't it? We're going to give us the history.
Can we tell the story, Roberto? Can we tell the story?
Of course we can.
Okay.
You're amongst friends.
Okay. That was at the time with a different presenter, with Mark Bolton, who I think he had a bit of a vision of the television that was coming. He was young, he was ambitious, and he made us sharper. I think we will all agree. And one of the things that he introduced was things that are now like social media clips. He wanted social media clips inside the show, and we didn't fully understand it, but it had to have its own name, that social media clip, and it had to have like a sound or presentation. And that was, we decided to clip the special moments of players, technical ability, things that were different. And then we called that Guapa, because we tried to explain that that's not what we shout when somebody does that, but it didn't matter to Mark, and I don't know who was the producer at the time, it just didn't matter. They wanted to call it Guapa. So if you call it Guapa, you have to have the voice saying Guapa every time that action took place. But we recorded 3 different Guapas, depending how good the action was. Little Guapa was for actions, and then it was a bigger Guapa and a bigger Guapa. But then we needed a voice, and it had to be a Spanish voice, a voice that brought that Spanish feeling to it. So we chose Roberto. So the famous voice now we can disclose of Guapa was Roberto Martinez.
That was Guapa. You see what happens when you work with the Spanish football, you end up losing your hair. Look at this kid.
Can we see that again, Guillem? Can we see that again? That was classic.
That was Guapa.
That's close.
Wasn't that great? Now, Graham, one of the things that I always felt privileged about was to be able to share time with these guys. It wasn't just to hear them talk and see how their mind functioned, but to share time with them that allows you to get football into 3 dimensions, really.
I couldn't agree more. I think that when you are fortunate enough to Sky change the policy a little bit for Spanish football and allowed journalists in to opine on what we saw, not just pro footballers, but for guys like you and I think everybody involved just now, what we did either pre-show or after we broadcast at halftime was listen to them, ask them questions, and poor guys, they must have been absolutely sick to death. Maybe not with your questions, which are better directed, but I was like, give me more information now. Tell me another anecdote. I wasn't lucky enough to be on many of Roberto's shows, but when I was a viewer, I saw everything that you guys have been talking about. The critical analysis, the clarity, the mix of knowledge of Spanish and Scottish and English and Welsh football, which made him, with such a good player, a really privileged contributor. But let me pay off with three. You asked about Terry. Let me just tell people who are watching 3 things. Terry came in early worked away on a show, and then sat down on a particular game where it corresponds to what you're talking about, where he was analysing something. And he kind of turned to me. I think we were in the bar that day, Guillem. You know, those high stools that break your knees and made you feel like a jockey, even though I might have had to slim a little bit down even to make the Grand National. And he devastated. He just pulled the game and the patterns and the manager's ideas apart. I was sitting there with my jaw touching the top of my chest, and he turned to me and went, "I'm a little bit nervous. Am I doing it right?" Doing it right? That's Ballon d'Or stuff. Do you remember when Terry had slight difficulties with his heart, went into hospital, and was back in the studio after having open heart surgery? He was back in the studio 10 days later, going, "No, I'm not missing a minute of this. This is such joy." He said, "I was walking around the hospital trying to get fit again the other day, and now I'm back on the show." And Guillem, I think that talks to everything that your guests today have mentioned about and Roberto talked about. We love not being on television. We love being able to communicate Spanish football, I think.
We've got two new guests in Ellis Palmer and John Driscoll. John is one of the commentators, and Ellis followed the story of Revista because he was from the inside and the outside as well. He was a follower of Spanish football from the early days, and now, as we heard earlier, is involved with explaining Catalan politics, no less. So, Ellis, tell us a little bit about your experience of enjoying La Liga and Revista on Sky.
I was probably hiding in the back of the studio on quite a few of the shows, and also hiding out in the commentary cabin, as it was in the various commentary closets that Sky put my dad and Jerry and Terry and John in over the years. That's for sure. And I can tell you, they literally were closets. You could hardly swing a cat.
Yeah, I came out of the closet.
But that is what it is. These days, I work for BBC World Service, so radio, news, politics. That's more my kind of thing, to be honest with you. But I think for a whole generation of football fans, a whole generation of European football fans, of Spanish football fans, Revista was the kind of go-to magazine show for the football they wanted to watch every week, be it Messi, be it Ronaldo, be it the old Ronaldo, be it Rivaldo back in the day. And the rest of their own teams, the Cadiz, the Malagas, the Numancias, whatever it may be, it's for little things like that people came to Revista for and made it so valuable.
It's just to show you how far we came, Guillem, because when we started doing Revista De La Liga, he was literally in nappies and he was 2 years of age, and now he's fully grown with a beard. And in the latter days, in the last few kind of weeks of the show, I don't know if you remember, he was working behind the scenes in the gallery. So it just kind of showed what a family we were, that I'd be leaving the family behind and the baby behind. And then in the last few shows, he was there kind of doing the replays and turning stuff around. And Ellis was my statsman as well. Getting all this stuff from the Spanish newspapers and doing the due diligence on the games as well.
And Ellis, you actually have Rob said earlier that you got into Spanish culture and even the languages through the football. Many people did that, and many we've all come across and have told us that we opened their mind a little bit. But you in particular, how many languages do you speak?
Oh, just Spanish, Catalan, and English, unfortunately.
And Irish.
A little bit of Irish. But to be fair, as it were. But with the with the Catalan, I think that was really, really invaluable. I used to live around the corner from the Camp Nou. On occasion, the dad would come over and visit me. And taking a game or taking a futsal game or a basketball game. That's the real value of, Spanish football. It became this kind of thing that people come over for a weekend and really enjoy and really get soaked into. And I think Revista was the tool and the way of means for doing that for so many fans of my age and possibly a little bit older and a little bit younger.
There we go.
We're finishing. There's 5 minutes. We're gonna hear from John. Remember that we're doing this because we want to see each other's faces and talk to each other, but also because we're raising funds for Ukraine. So you go to the description below. You have all the details. You've got to go to the link and donate if you can. But John, it's your time to tell us one or two stories of your time as a commentator on the Spanish football. You're still involved on the Spanish football, of course. You've got your own podcast with Terry. But from that time, tell us one or two stories from that.
So the first ever game I did, Guillem, I got a call. I was in Sainsbury's. Apologies for the noise, by the way. I'm in a cafe in Dublin. I've just arrived. I was in Sainsbury's in Didcot, and I got a call to go and do Betis versus Valencia. And at the time, I was working partly for Sky and also on the Italian World Feed. So it was a bit of a cross-European transfer to make the move to Spain. And then it was a good job I did that game, because a short while after that, I remember sitting there ready for a game. I can't remember what game we were supposed to be doing. And a gradual realization and a sinking feeling that we had the pictures for the wrong game, because we were sitting in London doing this commentary and we're thinking it will switch over soon. They'll switch. I'm sure this will switch over just before, but lo and behold, it never did switch over. All that preparation, watching other games, writing all your notes, all your stats and all that. And the game kicks off, and the producer, who I think at the time was Stevie, he said, "You're going to have to do it." So off we go. And we commentate on an entirely different game from the one that we prepared.
And I believe
the other one that I remember.
The best game you commentated, John, they telling me.
And the other one that I remember doing, actually definitely with Terry, do you remember when Pepe totally lost his mind? Do you remember that game, Terry? And and it was, there was too much going on, and I remember some panicking slightly. I was quite new to it, new on Sky, and he should have got about 10 red cards, shouldn't he? And I think I identified about 5 of the red cards, and then the rest of them, I was, oh no, this is running away from me, and in a slight sense of panic. But we got there. We there's a sense that sometimes that you're blagging your way through it and flying by the seat of your pants. But I loved it. It was brilliant. I grew to love the Spanish football, despite my transfer from Italy. And it's lovely seeing all your faces as well, because it was a beautiful team. All the guys behind the scenes as well. I'm sure you've all mentioned as well. So it's not just the hugely talented and clever people that you see on the screen as well. It was a brilliant team, and the nights out were wonderful as well.
Yeah, I think we need another reunion to tell the stories of those nights. But I think you just touched the head on the nail on the head. Rob, help me. The nail on the head. Because it was the hard work of the people behind the scenes who made the whole thing get together, and that's why I think we should leave the last word to Dave and to Mark, the producers of the show. We've got 3 minutes left. But Mark, Dave, I don't know if you want to mention some of the people that were behind the scenes that helped you, some of the stories that we may have not touched on, some of the people that you brought into the shows that you remember.
Far away, Mark.
Well, someone used the word team, which was the main thing. There were lots of people. I bump into them now and then, and it's great to see they've all tended to go on to good things. There's the likes of Stevie and Phil Chorley and Doc, Lisa, Gemma. There were loads. Miriam, the LPA that I inherited from Dave as well. It was a good team, a wonderful family, and great times, and look forward to a proper reunion. Although this has been amazing as well. Over to you, Dave.
Yeah, well, I would just say, obviously, I had Stevie and Mark working for me in the early days, so they've done pretty well for themselves, I have to say. And congratulations to them. But pretty much every year we'd have a change of assistant producers, but every year, whoever it was who came in just rose to the task. And as I say, we are a family. We were a family. Everybody that worked on the program loved working on the program, whether it was the live games or the Spanish Review, it was called in the early days, or Revista, which it eventually became. And it was a pleasure for me to be involved for those 6-7 years. I'll always remember it fondly, and I would love to get to meet you all in person again sometime in the near future. Maybe we can't even go to Don Fernando's in Richmond anymore. It's closed. Oh, how sad is that? But I'm sure we can find somewhere.
It's because we stopped going there.
Yeah, fair point.
Now, it's been absolutely wonderful seeing all of you, all your faces, see that you're doing very well. It was a good melancholy, I think, is
Guillem is gone.
Finishing in a typical Spanish way, huh?
He's gone for another siesta. 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. He goes, has a little lie down for a couple of hours.
He's lost the feed again.
Rob, you'll have to take us off air.
Yeah. Rob, you'll have to say goodnight. You'll have to say goodbye.
Give me a count, guys. No, it has been a pleasure.
10, it wasn't melancholy.
And don't forget why we're here, to raise money as well. I will see you in Don Fernando's in Richmond at Christmas. Guillem, Graham, Dave, Roberto, Mark, Eltel, and John. Until next time, take care.